I never thought my life would take such a sharp turn, but here I am, sharing my story in hopes that it might resonate with someone out there. My name is Mark, and I was married to Lisa for 6 years. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. We had a nice house, a stable income, and a life that many would envy. But underneath that facade, cracks were beginning to appear. From the outside, Lisa was the quintessential partner. She was charming and funny, with a quick wit that would draw people in. Friends often told me how lucky I was to be with her. But as time went on, I started noticing little things that made me uneasy. The late nights out with the girls, the sudden interest in a new workout regime, and the frequent texting that seemed to heighten whenever I was around. I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, I trusted her. But that trust began to erode. I mean, how many times can you ignore the way someone's behavior shifts? One night, returning home from work early, I found her phone on the kitchen table. My gut instinct told me to look. I hesitated but eventually picked it up. That was my first mistake. Scrolling through her messages, I came across exchanges that made my stomach drop. There were flirty texts laced with innuendos and emojis that made it clear this was more than just a friendship. My heart raced as I recognized the name, Derek, an old friend of hers. There were plans to meet up, and the tone was distinctly sexual. I felt sick. She was wearing her wedding ring, and here she was, chatting away with another man about things that were supposed to be reserved for our private moments. I confronted her that night, my heart pounding, ready for a storm of emotions. When she walked through the door, I was a bundle of nerves, and I could tell she sensed something was off. I blurted out my findings, holding her phone as evidence, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. The look on her face was one I'll never forget, eyes wide, mouth agape, and all the color drained from her cheeks. Instead of the remorse I expected, she went on the defensive. "You're overreacting," she said. "Derek is just a friend. You know how I joke around." The lies fell from her lips so easily, and I could hardly believe it. I felt like I was watching a scene play out in a poorly written drama. Over the next few minutes, she continued to deny everything. Her explanations became even more ludicrous, twisting my words and turning the tables on me. Suddenly, I was the one being accused of being paranoid and controlling. My anger boiled, but deep down, I was also flooded with confusion and sadness. How could someone I loved so deeply lie to my face without a single indication of guilt? I was lost in a whirlwind of emotions, but one thing was clear: I couldn't let this go. This was a betrayal of the highest order, and it hit me hard. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the ground beneath my feet was crumbling away. I decided then and there that I needed to think about what I wanted moving forward. Was I going to fight for my marriage, or was it time to walk away? The realization of her disloyalty gripped me harder than I could have imagined, and I knew I had to make a choice, one that would define the rest of my life. What was next? How could I process this? The emotional roller coaster had just begun, and I had no idea where it would take me, but I was determined to figure it out. After that confrontational evening, I felt like I was living in a fog. Lisa's face, initially shocked and defensive, was now a haunting image in my mind. I spent the night tossing and turning, the emotional storm refusing to settle. I tried to replay our pasts in my head, searching for clues I might have missed, but it all felt like a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. The next day, I took a mental health day from work. I couldn't bear the thought of putting on a brave face when inside I felt like I was crumbling. I sat on our couch, staring at the wall, reflecting on everything. The house felt eerily quiet. The usual sounds of Lisa humming in the kitchen were absent. I felt utterly alone. I decided to go for a walk to clear my head, hoping the fresh air would help. As I wandered through the neighborhood, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone could see right through me. I was the guy whose wife was cheating, and I was the fool who hadn't seen it coming. I passed by a small cafe where we used to go on lazy Sunday mornings, and the memories hit me like a wave. It felt like a different life, one that might as well have belonged to someone else. That evening, as I returned home, I found Lisa sitting on the couch, her expression unreadable. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I can't do this right now," I said. I needed time to process. I could see she was frustrated, but I had no desire to hear her excuses. Every word she had said the previous night felt like a slap in the face. As the days passed, I noticed small changes in Lisa's behavior. She became more anxious, often looking at her phone, her eyes darting whenever it buzzed. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or if she was trying to keep the charade up. I started to observe her closely. Was she still seeing Derek? My mind raced with thoughts, each one darker than the last. I made the decision to dig deeper, not out of malicious intent but from a desperate need for clarity. I wanted to know if she was still in contact with him. I found myself in a strange position, feeling like a detective in my own life. I started checking her social media accounts, and that's when I stumbled upon something that made my stomach turn. She had posted a picture of her and Derek, arms around each other, both wearing big smiles. The caption read, "Just a fun night with my favorite people." Blessed, my heart sank. This was more than just a friendship, it was an outright betrayal. My emotions took a nosedive into anger. I felt rage bubbling inside me, and I knew I had to confront her again. This wasn't just texting anymore, this was a full-blown affair. I couldn't sit back and let her continue living in this fantasy world while I was suffering in silence. That evening, I confronted her once again. She was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine when I walked in. With a deep breath, I said, "I saw the photo, Lisa." The air seemed to thicken as her face went pale, and for a moment I thought she might deny it again, but she didn't. At first, she tried to dismiss it as a harmless night out. "It was just a stupid picture, Mark. You're overreacting again." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. This was the moment I had to make her see the gravity of what she had done. "No, Lisa, this isn't just a harmless picture. You're flaunting your affair on social media. You're lying to my face, and I deserve better than this." Her defenses came up right away. "You're making it into something it is. You're paranoid and controlling." Every accusation just fueled my anger. I felt like I was in an endless cycle of blame. How could she twist this around? As we continued to argue, I felt the weight of our entire relationship bearing down on me. All those years of trust and love felt like they were unraveling before my eyes. This was not the woman I thought I knew. I wanted to be angry, but I also wanted answers. I needed closure. Was it worth it? I demanded. Was it worth destroying everything we built together? Her silence spoke volumes. In that moment, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. I realized I was done with her lies. I had to take control of my life again. I knew my next steps had to be calculated. My heart was breaking, but my mind was made up. I had to reclaim my dignity. I wasn't going to allow her betrayal to define my existence any longer. I had to plan my revenge, not out of hatred, but as a way to reclaim my power. That's when I started forming the thoughts that would guide me through the chaos ahead. After that night, I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, and I had to choose my path carefully. I needed to regain a sense of control in my life, and planning my next move became my sole focus. The emotional roller coaster had left me drained, but beneath that exhaustion simmered a newfound determination. I wasn't just going to sit back and let Lisa dictate the narrative of our story. I spent days thinking about how to execute my plan. It was more than just revenge. It was about reclaiming my sense of self-worth. I wasn't the victim in this situation. I was a man who had been wronged, and it was time for her to understand the magnitude of her betrayal. I decided to take a strategic approach. I started by documenting everything. I created a hidden folder on my laptop, compiling her social media posts, screenshots of her texts with Derek, and any other evidence that showcased her infidelity. I felt like a detective piecing together a case, and with every new addition to my folder, my resolve strengthened. I also reached out to a close friend, Jake, who had been a silent observer of my marriage. I needed someone to confide in, someone who could provide a fresh perspective. During a late-night meetup at a bar, I unloaded everything. "Man, I'm lost," I confessed, pouring out the details of Lisa's betrayal. Jake listened intently, shaking his head in disbelief. "You deserve better than this, Mark. You can't let her walk all over you like this. You need to show her the consequences of her actions." His words resonated with me. I had spent so long trying to maintain the peace, but Jake was right. It was time to stop being the nice guy. With Jake's support, I began planning an evening that would shatter the facade Lisa had built around her betrayal. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. I devised a scheme to confront her in a way that would expose her lies to others, making sure she could no longer hide behind her excuses. The day I chose for my plan was a Friday. Lisa had a girls' night out scheduled, and I knew she wouldn't be home until late. I reached out to a few of our friends, asking them to join me for a small gathering at our place. I told them I needed to talk about something important without giving away the details. They agreed to come over, eager to lend their support. As the evening approached, I set the stage. I made sure the living room was cozy, with dim lighting and some drinks prepared. I knew Lisa would come home to a scene that was anything but ordinary. I was nervous, but I felt a sense of anticipation as well. This was my moment to take back my power. When the clock struck 10 and she walked through the door, I could see the surprise on her face. She had clearly expected a quiet night at home. "What's going on here?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. "Surprise, I wanted to have a little get-together," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The friends I had invited looked at each other, sensing the tension in the air. I could feel Lisa's suspicion growing as she scanned the room, her gaze landing on me. "Mark, what's this really about?" she asked, her tone shifting to defensive. I smiled inwardly, knowing she was about to have her world turned upside down. I took a deep breath and turned to my friends. "Guys, I need to share something with you. I've discovered that Lisa has been cheating on me." The room fell silent. I could see the realization hit my friends, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and vindication as I continued. "She's been lying to my face, and tonight, I want her to explain herself." Lisa's face twisted in shock, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to form words. "You can't be serious," she exclaimed, looking at me incredulously. "This is just ridiculous, Mark." I pressed on, detailing the evidence I had gathered, the messages, the photos, everything. I could feel her panic rising as she realized there was no escape. "You're going to embarrass me in front of our friends over some ridiculous accusation." She shot back, desperation creeping into her voice, but I was resolute. "This isn't about embarrassment, Lisa. This is about accountability. You've been living a lie, and I'm done being your fool." As I watched her struggle to maintain her composure, I knew this was only the beginning of her heartbreak. I wanted her to understand how deeply she had hurt me, how the trust we had built was shattered beyond repair. The evening escalated into chaos, with Lisa trying to deny everything, but the more she spoke, the more ridiculous her excuses sounded. Amidst the tension, I could see the support of my friends, their eyes filled with sympathy for me. I realized that I wasn't alone in this. I had allies, and they stood firmly by my side as I dismantled the lies. As the night wore on, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my narrative. I had stood up for myself, and while the confrontation was painful, it was also cathartic. I could finally see a path forward, and it felt empowering. Lisa would have to face the consequences of her actions, and I was ready for whatever came next. The aftermath of that night felt surreal. I had confronted Lisa, exposed her lies, and now our lives were hanging in the balance. After my friends left, the air in the house was heavy with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Lisa, visibly shaken, sat on the couch, her face a mixture of anger and vulnerability. I could see she was struggling to process what had just happened. "I can't believe you did this," she finally said, her voice trembling. "You turned our friends against me." "It was your actions that led us here, Lisa." I shot back, feeling a rush of indignation. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." The reality of the situation began to sink in for both of us. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was the end of trust, the death of our marriage as we had known it. We spent the next hour in an agonizing silence, each of us lost in our thoughts. I could hear her sniffling softly, and for a brief moment a part of me felt a flicker of pity, but then I pushed that thought away. I couldn't afford to be weak now. Eventually she broke the silence. "What do you want from me, Mark?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was a hint of defiance in it too. "Do you want me to grovel? To beg for forgiveness? Because I won't do that." I shook my head. "This isn't about begging. You need to face what you've done. No more lies, no more excuses." I felt a surge of clarity. I needed to set boundaries for myself. I didn't want to continue living in this emotional turmoil. Maybe we should separate, I said, each word hitting harder than the last. I need time to think about whether there's any way to salvage this. Lisa's reaction was immediate. You're just going to give up on us, she shouted, her voice tinged with disbelief. After everything we've been through, after everything you've put me through, I corrected her, my tone firm. You've made your choices and I have to make mine now. The reality of a separation hung between us like a thick fog. It was painful and liberating at the same time. I needed distance, time to heal and to think about what I truly wanted. I could feel a mixture of fear and relief coursing through me. This was uncharted territory, and I had no idea what the future would hold. The next few weeks were a blur. I moved into a small apartment nearby, trying to adjust to life without Lisa. It felt strange not returning home to her, not hearing her laugh or seeing her face light up when she talked about her day. But there was also a sense of freedom in being away from the constant weight of her betrayal. I began to rediscover myself, using this time to reflect on what I wanted moving forward. I started hitting the gym regularly, channeling my anger and sadness into exercise. I read books, reconnected with friends, and spent weekends exploring new hobbies. It was as if I was reawakening parts of myself that had been dormant for years. I was a work in progress, and slowly I began to feel stronger. One evening I met up with Jake for drinks. We sat at the bar and he could see the change in me. "Man, you look good. You're starting to reclaim your life," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "Thanks, I needed this," I replied, taking a sip of my drink. "It's been tough, but I'm learning to let go." As we talked, I realized that I had not only distanced myself from Lisa, but I had also distanced myself from the doubts that had plagued me for so long. I was gaining clarity about what I wanted in a relationship. I wanted honesty, respect, and loyalty. I knew I deserved someone who would cherish me and not take me for granted. But even with this newfound strength, I was still haunted by memories of Lisa. I missed the good times, the laughter, the dreams we had shared. Those recollections would creep in during moments of weakness, reminding me of what I had lost. It was a bittersweet struggle. I was determined to move forward. Then one night I received a text from Lisa. My heart raced as I stared at the screen, debating whether to open it. I took a deep breath and clicked on it. "Can we talk? I'm really sorry for everything. I've had time to think." I paused, reading and rereading her message. Part of me wanted to respond, to give her another chance, but another part of me knew I had to keep my distance. I spent days wrestling with my emotions. Was I ready to face her again? Would I allow her back into my life after everything that had happened? Ultimately, I decided to meet her. But this time I would be prepared. I had to protect myself, and I needed to be clear about my boundaries. It was time to confront the reality of our relationship once more, this time on my terms. As I walked into the cafe where we agreed to meet, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. I was not the same person I had been when we first started this journey together. I was ready to face whatever came next, ready to stand firm in my worth. Lisa would have to prove that she truly understood the pain she caused if there was any hope of rebuilding what had been lost. As I sat in the cafe, waiting for Lisa, I could feel the tension in the air. The place was bustling with people, laughter, and conversations, but all I could focus on was the impending confrontation. I had spent the last few weeks preparing myself mentally for this moment, and I was determined to approach it with clarity and strength. When Lisa finally walked in, I barely recognized the woman I had once loved. She seemed smaller, her confidence diminished. The vibrant energy she used to exude was replaced by a hesitance that made my heart ache. She spotted me and approached cautiously, a mix of hope and anxiety in her eyes. "Mark," she said softly as she slid into the seat across from me. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." "Let's get straight to it, Lisa," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "You wanted to talk, so let's talk." She nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, clearly struggling to find her words. "I've had time to think about everything, and I realize how wrong I was. I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am for what I did." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. There was a slight tremble in her voice, but I had learned the hard way that apologies can be hollow when they come too easily. "What do you want from this conversation?" I asked, wanting to gauge her intentions. "I want to make things right," she said, her eyes pleading. "I miss you, Mark. I've realized that what I had with Derek was nothing compared to what we built together." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a familiar pang in my chest. I wanted to believe her, but I had learned that trust is not easily rebuilt. "You can't just say I'm sorry and expect everything to go back to normal," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You broke my trust in the most profound way possible. Why should I believe you now?" "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been going to therapy and I'm working on myself. I see how my actions hurt you, and I want to prove that I can be a better person, a better partner." Her admission struck a chord with me. I could see she was genuinely struggling with guilt and remorse, but I also had to protect my heart. "Proving yourself will take time," I said, "and I need to be honest, I'm not sure if I want to try and work this out. I've spent the last few weeks finding myself again, and it's been liberating." "I understand," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "But I love you, Mark. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I can't imagine my life without you." I felt my defenses slipping as I looked into her eyes, flooded with emotion. This was the woman I had married, the woman who once brought me so much joy. But I couldn't ignore the hurt and betrayal that lingered in the back of my mind. "Love isn't enough without trust, Lisa," I reminded her, my voice firm. "Trust has to be rebuilt brick by brick. I'm not sure I'm ready to start that process." I watched as she processed my words, her expression shifting between hope and despair. "What if I commit to transparency? What if I give you access to my phone, my social media? I want to show you that I'm serious about this." "Transparency is a start," I acknowledged, but I was cautious. "But I need more than just promises. I need to see real change, real effort from you over time. I need to know that you understand the depth of your betrayal, and I need to feel secure in our relationship again." "Can we try?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Can we take small steps?" I deliberated for a moment, weighing the potential for heartbreak against the hope of reconciliation. I had longed for this conversation, yet I feared the uncertainty of reopening old wounds. "We can try," I finally replied, feeling a mixture of apprehension and hope. "But it won't be easy, and I won't tolerate any more lies. If you mess up again, that's it." Lisa nodded vigorously, gratitude evident on her face. "I won't let you down, Mark. I promise I'll work on myself and our relationship." As we talked, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, mingled with the scars of the past. I wasn't blind to the possibility of further disappointment, but I knew I had to approach this cautiously. We agreed to take it slow, to recommit to open communication, and to check in with each other regularly. The conversation left me feeling both drained and slightly lighter. I had opened the door to reconciliation, but I was also aware that the journey ahead would be long and challenging. It wasn't just about Lisa's commitment to change. It was about my willingness to trust again, to let her back into my heart, piece by piece. As I drove home, I reflected on the complexities of love and forgiveness. I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was taking control of my life, no longer a passive participant in my own story. I had asserted my boundaries and made it clear that I would not accept anything less than the respect and loyalty I deserved. Regardless of what the future held, I knew that I had grown. The experience had taught me about resilience and self-worth. I had emerged from the heartbreak stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. It was a difficult path ahead, but I was resolved to navigate it with my head held high. I was not just Mark, the husband who had been cheated on. I was Mark, a man ready to reclaim his life. The days and weeks that followed our conversation were a delicate dance of cautious hope and lingering doubt. Lisa seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding our relationship. She made it a point to communicate more openly, sharing her thoughts and feelings, and I appreciated her efforts. But I was still guarded, constantly analyzing every interaction, unsure if I could let my guard down completely. Our evenings were filled with conversations about our past, our dreams for the future, and the mistakes that had brought us to this point. There were moments of laughter, moments of silence, and moments of tension. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of the Lisa I once loved, and other times I saw the shadow of betrayal lurking just beneath the surface. Every time I glanced at her wearing her wedding ring, a mix of anger and hope coursed through me. I had removed mine the night I confronted her and left it on her pillow as a symbolic gesture of my discontent. It was a reminder of what had been lost and what we were now trying to salvage. I didn't want to rush back into wearing it until I felt secure in our relationship again. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to Lisa. "How are you feeling about everything?" I asked, my voice gentle but probing. I wanted to gauge her commitment and sincerity. "I'm scared," she admitted, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I know I messed up and I'm terrified that I'll lose you forever. I'm trying to be better, I promise. I don't want to go back to the way things were." Her vulnerability struck a chord in me. I could see the effort she was making, but the memories of her betrayal still haunted me. I needed to vocalize my feelings. "I still have my doubts, Lisa," I replied, my tone firm yet kind. "It's going to take time for me to trust you again fully. I want to believe you, but you need to continue proving that you're committed to this." Over the following weeks, Lisa worked tirelessly to show me she was serious. She attended therapy regularly, and I could sense the genuine desire for change in her actions. She started volunteering at a local charity, engaging in activities that brought her joy and fulfillment. I admired the effort she was putting in, but I still found myself holding back emotionally. Then one night, as we lay in bed, I finally felt the weight of my own apprehension. "This healing process is hard," I said quietly. "Want us to work, but I'm afraid of getting hurt again." "I understand," Lisa replied softly. "I've been selfish, and I've hurt you in ways I never realized. I promise I'll keep working on myself and on us. I don't want to lose you, Mark." As the weeks turned into months, we began to navigate the complexities of our relationship with more honesty and intention. I realized that healing wasn't just about Lisa proving herself. It was about me learning to forgive and trust again. We started attending couples therapy together, opening the lines of communication even further. In therapy, we explored our fears, desires, and the roots of our issues. It was uncomfortable at times, but I could see the strength in vulnerability. We set boundaries, established open lines of communication, and learned to listen to each other without judgment. I started to feel the armor I had built around my heart begin to crack. One evening, after a particularly enlightening therapy session, we sat on the couch, holding hands. I could feel the warmth of her touch, and it reminded me of the affection we once shared. "I think I'm ready to try again," I said, my voice steady. "But it's going to take work from both of us. I want to rebuild what we had, but I need to know you're fully committed." "I am," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm ready to fight for us, Mark. I love you, and I want to prove that I can be the partner you deserve." That night, I found myself contemplating the journey we had undertaken. It felt like we were both emerging from the shadows of our past, stepping tentatively into the light. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but I had learned that love could be resilient even in the face of betrayal. As time passed, bits of my heart began to heal. I started to wear my wedding ring again, symbolizing my willingness to embrace this new chapter of our lives. It was a reminder of our commitment to one another, the struggles we had overcome, and the hope that lay ahead. Ultimately, I learned that life is messy and complicated. Love is not always straightforward, and relationships can be tested in ways we never expected. But with patience, effort, and a willingness to confront our flaws, healing is possible. As I reflect on this journey, I am reminded of the importance of self-worth and the power of forgiveness. While I had been devastated by Lisa's betrayal, I emerged stronger, more aware of what I wanted in a partner and in life. I learned that I deserved love built on trust, respect, and open communication. So, to anyone facing a similar situation, I offer this: don't shy away from confronting the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Trust your instincts, take the time to heal, and remember that rebuilding may take more effort than you can imagine. But if both partners are committed, it's possible to forge a new path forward, one that honors the past but embraces the promise of a brighter future.